I'm a descendant of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. That photograph there at the top is that's a picture of the Appalachian Mountains where my relatives come from. And then this lovely lady here is my grandma, my dad. He passed away back in August. That's me at camp up there in South Dakota, and that's my daughter. The reason that I do the work that I do in Partnerships for Native Health is so that her generation won't have to experience some of the health disparities that our generation and our parents' generations have experienced. My oldest brother, for instance, passed away at the age of 49 from complications of diabetes, and that was entirely preventable from my perspective, and so that's why I've returned to the field of Native Health and do the work that I do now. So today's presentation, I'm going to talk about mental health during the pandemic, and start off just by doing a little bit of an overview of what the pandemic is doing to mental health in the U.S., some of the differential effects that it may be having on different groups of people, and then we'll talk about some ways to stay mentally healthy in the pandemic, and then I'll open the floor for questions and discussion. As one might expect, anxiety disorder and depressive disorder have increased considerably in the United States during the April to June period, which is where these data were collected, of 2020, compared to the same period in 2019. You see an almost 80% increase in adults that are 18 to 24 years of age, about 55, almost 60% increase in those that are 25 to 44, 35% increase in those that are 45 to 64, and an 18% increase in those that are 65 and older. As one might expect, hand in hand with those results, alcohol sales in the United States during March of 2020 compared to the same period in 2019, you have wine up 27.6%, spirits up 26.4%, beer, cider, and malt beverages 14%. Those box wines, 3-liter boxes of wine, 53% increase over the previous year. 24 packs of beer up 24%, and online sales of alcohol up 42% over the previous year. So clearly some folks are turning to what might be some less productive ways of coping with that increased anxiety and depression. A study looking at the effect of sheltering in place or lockdowns on mental health showed that those who are sheltering in place, 21% reported that it had a major negative impact, while 27% reported a minor negative impact, with an overall 47% poor impact on mental health. And then those not sheltering in place, 13% major negative impact, 24% minor, with a 37% overall. So, when we go into these periods like we're in right now, where the infection rates are surging and really the best recommendation is to stay home as much as you possibly can, that takes its toll, aside from the other effects of the pandemic. Meanwhile, COVID-19 itself can lead to neurological and mental complications. So a person that's infected and undergoing the illness can experience things like delirium, where they are acutely confused for a period of time and lose their sense of orientation to who, where, when, and what is going on. They may experience agitation or increased levels of irritability. And there's been some evidence that people are at an increased risk of having a stroke during the course of their infections. So while the pandemic is affecting everybody, those who get infected, they face some additional risks to their mental health. People with pre-existing mental, neurological, or substance use disorders are also more vulnerable to COVID-19 infection. This schematic that's up on the screen here, for those of you who are on the phone, it shows a picture of the brain and a little lightning bolt showing the lockdown, psychosocial stress, and general activation of the central nervous system, and then an arrow pointing to the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which is the neurological axis that gets ramped up when we are experiencing stress. And there's an arrow from that pointing to conditions such as depression, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, psychosis, obsessive compulsive disorder, epilepsy, Alzheimer's disease, and then pointing down from that toward inflammatory cytokines, which increase the peripheral inflammation that people experience when they are struggling through the infection. So yeah, these things are all interrelated actually, and can form a feedback loop that just ramps itself up over time. It's referred to as a positive feedback loop, though the effects are unarguably negative in this case. Specific to Indian country, we don't have any data yet on the specific effects in our communities and our relatives. However, given our levels of pre-existing mental health and substance use disorders due to historical trauma and colonization, you can only expect that these effects are likely magnified in our communities and among our relatives. So what to do about it? How do we stay mentally healthy in this difficult and trying time? First and foremost, take care of your body. We had these great exercises that Nancy walked us through there at the beginning. There's a number of resources on the internet. Deep breaths, stretching, all these things are helpful. These exercises in mindfulness that she walked us through, very helpful in soothing that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and calming down the nervous system. And that can be a huge help, as I'm sure most of you experienced as we were going through those activities. Do your very best to eat healthy, well-balanced meals, staying well-nourished and not, giving into our lesser desires to pig out on junk food just because we're hanging out on the couch and not really able to go anywhere. Want to try and fight against those urges and try and keep ourselves as healthy as we can physically. And part of that is exercise regularly in whatever ways you're able to in your environment. There are plenty of calisthenics exercises that you don't need any equipment to do, and lots of internet resources and YouTube videos for those as well. I can't emphasize this enough. Get plenty of sleep, especially if your schedule has been disrupted due to changes in employment or school schedules. You may be tempted to let your sleep get dysregulated, maybe sleep in, maybe nap in times that you wouldn't have napped for longer periods of time. Please don't do those things. It is really not good for your brain or your body. Avoid excessive alcohol and drug use. Maybe a short-term soothing effect of those things, but in the long term, not going to do you any good. Maintain a routine. Stick to a schedule. I can speak from my own experience just how important this one has been. Even over the Thanksgiving holiday when we had 4 days off, my routine got a little bit off and my sleep started to fall apart. I wasn't getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, wasn't doing my normal routine. And even in that 4-day period, I started to see some of the effects of that and snapped back and got right back to it. And things have shaped up considerably since then. Connect with other people. Talk with people you trust about your concerns and how you're feeling and things that might be going on. Just having that simple connection and sharing your experience can be extremely helpful. Connect with culture. I firmly believe that culture is medicine and that our traditions have kept our people healthy for thousands of years. And that's mentally and spiritually and emotionally healthy as well as physically healthy. While we do have social distancing measures in place, you can consider connecting online through social media. Facebook has a group called Social Distance Powwow, where people share videos and pictures of themselves dancing or their family members dancing or singing or drumming, or there's a marketplace if you want to go browse what would be the booths at a powwow for beadwork or whatnot. There's some beautiful stuff out there that people are still making and sharing with their communities. If internet's difficult for you, connect by phone or mail. Storytelling is a time-honored tradition of our people, and so is letter writing in more recent times. There's a certain artistry to writing a letter by hand that is at risk of being lost in today's culture of emails and quick typing and rapid communication and texting. Something to be said for handwritten script. Take care of your own emotional health. This will help you be able to think clearly and react to the urgent needs to protect yourself and your family. The things on the previous slide will all help your emotional status stay nice and even keel and leave you in a good, clear-headed space to deal with issues as they come up. Take breaks from watching, reading, or listening to news stories. Certainly 2020 and the last 4 years, the media cycle has just been crazy. It seems like there's always 4 or 5 groundbreaking things happening all the time. Hearing about the pandemic, especially in the last 9 months or so, being exposed to that over and over again, the numbers of infections and the numbers of fatalities, that can be upsetting and stressful. Just take a break, go for a walk, unplug. With regard to the negative effects of social isolation, one thing that's been getting a lot of airtime lately is that people are bubbling or creating pods. Being in a bubble does require a lot of communication and trust. You got to, be very clear with everybody in the bubble what the rules are when they're interacting with anyone outside of the bubble. The mask wearing, social distancing, hand washing. Everybody's got to be on the same page with regard to the precautions that they take when interacting with the outside world. But being in a bubble can protect against feelings of isolation, because you do have this, albeit limited number, but still intimate relationships that you can have without those precautions in place. Some interactions in which you can just let your guard down and not have to worry about it for the time being. Creation of a safe social space for you and your family. Also, it's important, if you haven't gotten it yet, just make time to unwind. Try to do some other activities that you enjoy. This may be another opportunity to interact with culture. These are just some resources that I pulled off of the CDC page for crisis assistance. There's a number of different resources there. Some are focused on child abuse, some on sexual assault, some on elder care, some for veterans. But really reach out and use these if you need them.